Hi everyone, welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Eva and today I am filming a spoilery filmed review of the first arc. I believe it's called the war arc for Vinland Saga. I am about to start the new arc. I got the volume on my TBR for this month and I thought I wanted to sit down and just kind of gather my thoughts about the first arc, what I particularly loved and what I struggled with at times, which is, spoiler alert, very little to be fair. But I just really like this kind of conversation because then allows the viewers to also go into spoilery comments and discussions. So yeah, that is what I'm about to do. Vinland Saga is something that if you're here listening to a spoilery review, I guess you know what it is about. But if you're a recurring viewer, I am sitting down today, so I'm a bit lower than usual. I just had a very long day. Unfortunately, I do have bad timing when it comes down to filming, so I always end up having an occasion to film when the day has almost gone by and I'm just exhausted. So today, rather than wobbling around and making these very uncomfortable to edit, I just thought, let me sit down and then we can have like my amazing, stunning, maybe we can even open it. I know this is about Vinland Saga, but we won't complain about seeing this beautiful box set that my lovely friends gifted to me of One Piece. I need to find another place for it because this is my bookshelf, apart from the middle, which I got my mangas and graphic novels, but this is the background we're going. We are in the same place, just sitting down for today. So, Vinland Saga, very quickly, this is a Viking-inspired historical fiction manga where you follow Thorfinn growing with his enemy and wanting to revenge his dead, and at the same time you follow the expansion of the Viking Empire into England and beyond. I don't know, for now we're just in England and potentially in Wales toward the end of the first arc. So I was lucky enough that I collected Vinland Saga. I'm collecting Vinland Saga in this edition. Sometimes they're out of stock, sometimes they're too expensive, so I'm taking my time with it. I've been reading Vinland Saga for around 6 months, I would say, not every month though, and each of these editions contain 2 volumes plus an additional story at the end which takes place during the Edo period, I believe, this story here, but I'm not a big fan of it, I'm sorry. Vinland Saga, let me start with just the only critique, or the only thing I didn't particularly like at the beginning of Vinland Saga, which now has been not an issue, like has been resolved by me just going through the arc, and this is just punching me, which is a bit annoying. So Thorfinn, our main protagonist, especially during the first, I would say, couple of books, so 4 volumes, I didn't click with him much. Like, I didn't find him particularly unique. I didn't enjoy his character and I was loving everybody else in the series apart from him, and he's the protagonist, so I was like, why can't I love Thorfinn? To a certain degree this is still true, in the sense that Thorfinn is, for me, not the least interesting, but it's the one that always takes a backseat when I'm reading a volume. I always think and I'm always invested in the stories of all the other characters, and then Thorfinn might appear on page, oh yeah, I remember now, we are here about him actually. And I understand this is also part of his character, a very quiet, broody, almost feral character, that he just doesn't get involved in everything. He's just focused on his objective, and if his objective is not strictly speaking part of a plot in the moment, it just takes a back seat. I do understand that, and the only thing that really changed, I guess, and then has become something that doesn't bother me that much, is that I just adjusted. I just realized that this story is so much bigger than just Thorfinn, and I also accepted that his character has to work this way and probably would work not as good if it wasn't this way. So I kind of just go with the flow now. I know that the next arc Thorfinn is growing, so he's gonna be more of a man in the next arc or so, and I am just curious to see if that comes with more characterization and us seeing more about his character. But I've not read the next arc yet, so no spoilers. So speaking of Thorfinn, I guess I can just go through all my points about him and then moving on to other characters. I think Thorfinn's story has something unique that I'm not used to compared to other manga series I've been loving and cherishing. For example, the fact that Thorfinn, clearly he saw his father being murdered by Askeladd in front of him. He saw how that duel ended up, how it was rigged, how it wasn't fair, and so he grows up with Askeladd, all times knowing that Askeladd is his enemy. And I think this is quite new, because personally I've read stories where, you know, whether Reis, the protagonist, was actually the bad guy, but was actually the key word, where our main protagonist grew up usually thinking that, you know, the caretaker, whether raised them, is actually the good guy, siding up with them until something happens, there is a revelation, and then now you know that, you know, the antagonist is whether raised you. But this is not the case here in Vinland Saga, where Thorfinn at all times knows that he's been raised by the guy who murdered his father. And of course he didn't have much of a choice in terms of who ended up raising him, so he had to kind of, you know, it's kind of a prisoner sort of situation in a sense. But at the same time, he is working toward a goal of dueling Askeladd fair and square and actually beating Askeladd due to his skill. So he wants to become so good that he can beat, you know, Askeladd, who is a great warrior. And that kind of conflict between Thorfinn sometimes having to, you know, do Askeladd bidding, and when they are going to England and conquering, Askeladd is giving orders to Thorfinn that he needs to follow, and he does follow them. But at the same time, then when he finds a quiet time, or when he finds the right occasion, then he does over and over again challenge Askeladd to a duel, and he constantly loses this duel. And I really appreciated how toward the end of the arc, Askeladd, at the number, I don't know, duel, Askeladd says, you keep losing because your reasons for doing this duel, the reasons, or, you know, the techniques you're using are not actually effective, and so are you stupid that you keep using the same things over and over again, and you're not learning that this is not working, is not what is gonna ultimately defeat me. And I hope that in the next arc we will see Thorfinn change to a point that whenever he's gonna defeat Askeladd, however he's gonna do it, he's gonna do it in a new way. I hope there is growth in that, in him trying so hard to beat him up, always with the same technique, always with this kind of, you know, strength, brutal strength and savagery, yet not in the clever way, which probably is gonna get the job done. Then now from that, I must say that Askeladd dies at the end of the first arc, dies at the end. I don't believe it. I think Askeladd is gonna come back. I think Askeladd is very much alive, and I do hope in a sense that Askeladd is alive and then he becomes the ultimate enemy to defeat. Because I don't know who else you can put in this series that is gonna be as good as Askeladd as an enemy. So I really hope that we get to see this duel, and then we get the fair and square duel that we are promised pretty much since Thor dies. You know, it's since then where we want to see Askeladd defeated by someone who can work even more cleverly than he does. And I really hope that Thorfinn will manage that ultimately. That is my aspiration. These are my dreams for the series, which is still ongoing, so we will see. However, I believe the last arc is about to commence or has started, something of the sort. So curious about that. I spoke about Askeladd, so I'm gonna then move on to him. It just makes sense that I do. I must say, Askeladd is a great enemy. He's not my ultimate favorite character, but kind of. He's like the same as with another character I'm gonna mention in a second. Askeladd is the character though that has provoked the more thoughts from me, has provoked the more intense emotions, and both from hatred and love in a sense, because now that toward the end again of this arc we explore more of Askeladd's story and his shame and his hiding to a certain degree that he's a slave of a son of a slave because he wants revenge, but then being the son of a slave is what led him to become who he has. I can't help in a sense to root for Askeladd in certain aspects. When we look at him killing his father and how Askeladd was raised in order, you know, to get to that point, I kind of didn't feel sorry for the dead. Like, I think kind of, you know, you had all the elements to create a psychopath and you just did. And so now we are left with Askeladd, who is someone who would be very different if he had grown up in different worlds, in a sense, which I know it's obvious. But seeing that side of Askeladd made me not justify his actions if you want, but really understanding when he was coming from, which makes it even harder now knowing that he's the enemy. And another reason why I hope Askeladd is not dead is because I think there are so much more motivations behind his actions. Like, I think he's a character that has so much more to offer and so much more to show us that I really hope that is gonna come back to life, because I can't imagine Vinland Saga without Askeladd in it. And I was mentioning this in my wrap-up when I did the free from spoilers wrap-up, which I do at the end of the month, so that is an option, you know, to hear me speak about manga I read without giving any spoilers. I was mentioning how, you know, the GOAT, the greatest of all time series I've read thus far, really had the perfect duo of the main character, or the hero versus the antagonist. And what really makes it powerful is that the coexistence of both, and how if you take one out of the picture, the protagonist is not going to be able to stand on its own feet. And I don't want to give any spoilers throughout the series in case you have not read it, but I'm just going to say, for example, Berserk, I'm not giving any spoilers, but Berserk has a main protagonist that ultimately by the time you reach the end, I think Guts could stand on his own without his antagonist. Thorfinn's, thus far, I don't think has the same privileges that Guts has. I think he needs Askeladd to have a meaning in this story. Maybe I'm wrong, again, I've just read the first arc, so he might develop and he might become a character that is so outstanding, or it's just unique in his own way, and he can, you know, be protagonist of his own stories without having, you know, the nemesis of Askeladd. But as of now, that is another reason why I'm a bit scared, because what is gonna Thorfinn do on his own? Because maybe again, this is me never growing to love him ultimately, but I kind of need to see them both, because this is what makes Vinland Saga for me so powerful, is that kind of conflict that arises from the fact that he's growing up with his antagonist. And if you remove Askeladd, I don't know, I do honestly feel for Thorfinn. Like, don't get me wrong, I do honestly generally feel for his situation. I do understand why he's so cold and feral. This is not me taking away anything from his trauma and his past. It's just me generally saying, you know, with me just reading something out of fiction, Thorfinn doesn't shine on the pages. And yes, not all protagonists have to shine, and maybe he is unique because he doesn't shine, and yet at the end it's gonna be like absolutely someone remarkable. And I guess if you keep following my reviews, when I do like a new arc review, we're gonna see if I change, if I grow to love him more, or what happens with him. So these are just, at this moment in time, my initial thoughts upon, you know, reading this series for the first time. So to recap, Askeladd is essential for me to this story. I also find Askeladd a very unpredictable character, and again, this is something that adds to the whole awe that I have for the series in general. You know, I don't know where this is going because I don't know where Askeladd is going, and I think those two things are connected. The other character that really grew on me is Prince Canute. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Canute, this prince that, you know, for a long time you wonder, is a girl, is a man, I still don't know, I'm not sure. I do honestly hope she's a girl. I don't think that's the case, but that would be like a nice twist, although we kind of expect it, some of us. Or maybe the twist is that he's not. You know what I mean? I don't know. Whatever is gonna happen, I'm okay with it. Canute is someone who really grew on me as well, and I think he is someone else who has the potential to become as interesting as Askeladd. So I've not lost all hopes, because even in the worst case scenario where Askeladd is indeed truly dead, I think Canute could become the perfect, or could become a substitute for him, in sense of, you know, having the perfect antagonist or the nemesis. And it's gonna be interesting because I do generally root for Canute. I really generally like the guy. I'm just gonna go with the guy, whether he's gonna end up being. And I appreciated this kind of, you know, layer character where you got the soft side, the side that wants to protect the people at the cost though of other lives, and being okay with doing the exchange, because it does take guts to just do that. And the way he changes, the way his growth happen and his change of character happen in that scene in, you know, in the wilderness and with the snow, and there was a lot of fighting, a lot of death that happened during those moments, and betrayal and people getting captured, and how that was the switch that changed Canute as a character, that I really liked. The pace of it, I liked how it was done, that change, what prompted the change, the losses that came with it, but also the responsibilities that came with it. It was completely a surprise. And again, that is a theme that has been recurring in Vinland Saga over and over again already just in the first arc, is an element of, whoa, okay, now you're changing things around, things are taking a turn, a twist for the unknown, and that makes me very excited about continuing on. My favorite character, or one of the characters that I just find refreshing, and it's actually one of the simplest one, it's Thorkel. Thorkel, probably I'm butchering all the names, I apologize, okay? Thorkel is one of the simplest characters for now. Is a character that has a simple goal, you know, you just tell him what to do and he just goes and do it, and then he needs simplicity, he needs strength, because it's this brutally strong, unbeatable Viking that shifted sides, and in his way of taking things always in a light way, if you want, can also being taken over by his emotions, either that anger or, you know, being happy, whether it is. I really enjoy him. I found him very refreshing, and I also find him the right character to give balance between, you know, the bleak hole that Thorfinn has been, you know, the kind of silent dead stare protagonist that Thorfinn is, and Askeladd, you know, violent, clever, is very Machiavellian in his way of thinking. And then you've got Thorkel, which is just a bit dumb at times, although I think it's like a pretended dumb, but this dumb, giant, unbeatable, always kind of in a good mood character. He really gives a kind of comic relief at times and balances out things. And I really like how toward the end he's a bit more in league with Canute, and the trio that's been formed, Canute, Askeladd and Thorkel, and what they're plotting. That scene when they go and then ultimately beat the king. I don't remember the name of the king, and I don't have that volume with me now, but the king, you know, the father of Canute, that actually gets murdered by Askeladd at the end of the arc. That scene when they're fighting a clever king and they have to team up to kind of, you know, counterattack, that is when I truly loved the story. I had loved scenes here and there, but that was volume 4. I truly enjoyed, probably the best volume thus far, and I like to see those minds coming together and brainstorming, and the twist and then came. I also think it really, mangaka really plays well the tensions in the room, and is able to make bold choices when it's needed, like again, you know, what Askeladd does at the end, and the kind of rebellion. And that's another reason why I hope he's not dead, because I do think there is way more underneath the events that happen in that hall at the end of the arc, and I just want to understand more, understanding why Askeladd has gone so off the rail from the plan. And I'm curious to know now how Canute and Thorkel and are gonna kind of take advantage, or are gonna twist things in their favor now. The fact that this series gives me a lot of food for thoughts is what is capturing my attention a lot. I'm gonna show you the art, but I'm pretty sure you know the art. But I love the art as well. I think that must be said. Is very nice, and the combat scenes are pretty neat. And I think now that I've read a bunch of manga in the last couple of years, I think combat scenes, I am someone who cares quite much about the art style, and especially when it gets confusing, when it gets like a lot of people in a panel, a lot of fighting. If you can't do it well, I will take away a few points, or I will definitely notice it. And the fact that this doesn't have that fault, it's a plus for the series. I hope we also get more about Thorfinn family in the following arcs. I kind of had hopes for Ylva, his older sister. I know toward the end of the arc that she had married and she had children, and that was kind of not what I was expecting. I thought Ylva was gonna go and fight and become a warrior herself, and that didn't turn out that way. But I'm just curious to see if, you know, the mother of Thorfinn, or at least his sister Ylva, which we just got a snippet of at the beginning, but it was a very powerful character. I hope she comes back with a vengeance in a sense. And now again, I know that in the next arc Thorfinn has grown, and I'm just generally curious to see if there is any reunion. I was almost hoping that at the end of the war arc we had a man that was sent, not by the father, because the father is dead, Thor is dead, but was sent by the family, or sort of, I don't remember exactly, to find Thorfinn and bringing home, and of course he refused to do so. He's become kind of desensitized to his family, doesn't want to have anything to do with them, which I get, but I just kind of hoped that that guy had been successful. I understand that it wouldn't make sense because then probably the manga would finish before I get why the plot took the side that it took, but I just hoped that in a sense that man managed to convince Thorfinn to go home at least for a little while, and so we could see those characters. I also want to explore more the past of Thor, because there are some hints that things didn't go, like politically speaking, something happens there, and I don't know if maybe it has been too long of a time since I've read a few chapters where Thor, when he gets married and he gets a family and he's called back to war, is explored. So I don't know if I don't remember correctly, or if indeed it was just mentioned, just shown a few panels and then things were left there. Hopefully we can get a bit more about Thor history as well. I would love to know more about his dad. Clearly was someone very admirable, and a lot of people had a lot of respect for Thor, so I hope we can get more about him. But yeah, these are all my thoughts I have for now for Vinland Saga. It is a series that has it all for now. It has amazing art, very good storytelling, very good characterization. The duo of protagonist and antagonist was stellar, and I really like the theme that he explores and the way he does it, the way his dialogues are. So yeah, let me know what you think about Vinland Saga. Don't give me any spoilers for the next arc, please, but I would love to chat more in details about what you loved or maybe didn't love about the first arc of Vinland Saga. Anything I've missed. Again, a lot of the times you guys comment, you know, give me new insight in the series, and so when I reread it, because I tend to reread manga now and then, I can then appreciate the series even more with the things you've told me and I might not have noticed, because I do tend to consume a manga pretty fast when I read. But yeah, let's chat in the comments down below. If you're new, I would love for you to subscribe. I'm gonna keep having spoilery reviews of arcs while I go on with these, and hopefully other series. I want to have more of these conversations if it works for you guys. I think having like more spoilery in-depth review, or even non-spoilery, we'll see, can be very useful and can allow me to have more space to express my opinions and then explore also the motivations behind my opinions, because I do understand that sometimes I do wrap-ups and I might come across as quite harsh, or my opinions can be quite strong on certain things, and if I don't go in spoilers I can't unpack them. And you don't have to share my opinions, but if I can explain them more in details, they might get digested more easily in a sense. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Please take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Ciao!